Do you believe in the supernatural? Do you believe that some things happen that the human mind might just not be able to explain? If you don't, now is possibly the time to, especially if you're considering a visit to Yosemite National Park. There have been rumors about mysterious things happening in Yosemite National Park, from the ranger who claimed to have seen a human-like figure glowing in the dark, to the tales of the man who hung himself in the park years back and his ghost haunting campers late at night. And while doing some digging on these mysterious events, we've stumbled upon a seasoned ranger who shared his terrifying experiences with us. Yes, this park ranger in Yosemite National Park announced that something chilling is happening right now, and we'll give you the full gist in this video today. The ranger's name is Jake, and he had his first mysterious personal encounter in Yosemite National Park in 2010. He would be walking down one of the remote trails of the park one night when suddenly he encountered something extremely frightening that would change his life forever. Jake's love for preserving nature and wildlife would lead him to becoming a park ranger at Yosemite, and he was so happy with his job because it allowed him to keep the park clean and to protect it from disasters. Jake also gets to interact with visitors and guide them on how to treat the land with respect and also enjoy the serenity of nature. And of course, Yosemite National Park is one of the most beautiful in the world. Its waterfalls, rocky views, green woods, exotic valleys, lakes, and mountains are absolutely pleasing to behold. But the rumored danger that lurks behind this outward beauty has given tourists serious concern for years, and Jake's encounter has made the tension grow even further. Back to that fateful night, as Jake patrolled the trails within the Yosemite woods, he heard soft shrieking sounds shooting sharply throughout the wind. Ordinarily, he would feel that perhaps it was a little squirrel going about its business, but as he advanced to look around, he felt some sort of cold wind rush onto his face and down his spine. He staggered backwards and looked sharply to his right to find a strange figure, the like of which he had never seen before. He claimed to have seen a human-like figure that was covered in a silhouette of ethereal blue light that almost blinded him. He said that it felt like the figure was trying to engage him, but then it vanished within the twinkling of an eye before it could say anything. Jake mentioned that this experience made going back into the woods difficult for him for a while, and that was not even the worst experience that he had with the strange figure. The ranger was guiding a group of hikers on a cold night on the backwoods trail of Yosemite National Park when this dreadful event occurred. He had been leading them for the past week, and they were almost nearing the end of a cliff when they decided to set up a campfire. But as they were setting up, Jake felt a cold, frightening wind blow across his face, similar to the one that he felt on his first encounter. However, this time the wind came with a strangely strong energy, and it felt like they were being watched by someone or something within the woods. But then he dismissed the thought and decided to concentrate on the fun and the frenzy of the campfire before him. But hours into the camping, the cold wind rush returned, and this time it was stronger, and the campfire wasn't even strong enough to tame it. Suddenly, he saw 3 hulking figures dashing towards the campsite, and the moonlight helped to alert him to their presence. He thought to himself, at least this time I'm not the only one witnessing this. No one will think I'm making anything up now. As the beasts drew closer, he saw the ethereal blue glow emitting from their eyes, and he confirmed that they were the ones releasing the cold energy into the atmosphere. Although their snarls and growls sounded like that of coyotes and wolves, he was sure that they were not. These beasts drew closer and closer, and he could see their fangs glistening as their mouths watering hungrily, ready to tear through the flesh of their tasty prey. Jake took some steps backwards and reached for his flashlight, and he thought to himself, at least I'll get a glimpse of what killed me, or I might be lucky to scare them off with this light. On a second quick thought, he wanted to use his firearm on the beasts, but their massiveness and speed made him think otherwise. As he was about to pull out his flashlight, a bigger blue light, the same light that he had seen in the woods the other time, took over the darkness, and he felt as though time had frozen for a moment. This light was so blinding for a second, and then it started to dim, and as it dimmed, the 3 massive beasts vanished with it. Apparently, the brighter light had come to warn him twice earlier about the impending danger, and had subsequently saved him and the others from perishing in the woods. Jake and the camping hikers were thrown into temporary shock by what had happened, and as soon as he regained his consciousness, he ushered everybody out of their tent, and they all rushed to the main campground down the hills. Jake didn't mention the hikers' names or how they felt thereafter, but he did mention that every person with him on that day made it out of the woods safely. As if Jake's personal story was not horrible enough, he also recounted some scary tales that he had once heard about Yosemite National Park from older rangers before and after he had begun working there. He told the story of another seasoned ranger who had once spoken to him about his ordeal in the park. This story dates back to 1998, when an outdoorsman was employed alongside 14 other rangers to take charge, educate tourists, and watch over the park's backcountry Division 1. Since 90% of Yosemite's accessible areas are designated wilderness, people are given the liberty to wander around as they please with minimal rules enforced by patrolling rangers. There are also several areas for recreational activities such as skiing, camping, hiking, and climbing. Yosemite is simply a paradise on Earth when you observe its ambience in the daytime. But what creeps around in the dark is what's causing the mysterious nightmare rumors. The Backcountry Division employees are in charge of routine patrols, assisting visitors, and ensuring visitors' safety, while also issuing permits and keeping the environment clean. Their job's not an easy one, and only a nature lover would find it bearable. Another ranger said that he would be assigned to a patrol routine in Yosemite National Park's Hetch-Hetchy region, an area where it's reported that a man named Michael Allen had disappeared about 8 years ago. This part of the park is situated deep within the woods, about 10 to 20 miles away from the road. On his first day at the site, the ranger walked about 9 miles into the wilderness, just past the Rancheria Falls, a point where most hikers prefer not to explore. And by midday, no other people were left in the area, and he had to walk around alone, taking notes until late into the night. At midnight, something strange would occur. The ranger spotted something unusual ahead of him in the middle of the trails. At first, he thought that it was a rock or a tree stump, but as he drew closer, he realized that it wasn't what he thought. The thing that he saw ahead of him was both furry and lively, and he later realized that it was just a crow that was feeding on the carcass of a dead animal. He spooked the crow away and looked closer to identify the animal and found that it was the head of a deer. This realization relieved him, as he had initially thought the flesh was probably the remains of a long-lost human in the woods. The rumors about people mysteriously disappearing in Yosemite were fresh in his mind. He then proceeded with his patrol to a more relaxed mind, but unluckily for him, he would later spot a similar figure ahead. This time, he was even more startled at what he had seen, because for a moment he felt like he might be going crazy. Upon moving in closer, he then realized that it was the severed head of another deer, but not as fresh as the one that he had seen earlier. Upon further observation of the second deer's head, he could tell that the killing was not ordinary. He immediately ruled out that this was not the handiwork of a bear or a wolf, since there were no claw cuts or canine bites on the head. The cuts on the animal were so clean that he realized it had to have been done by a human engaging in illegal hunting or a supernatural being lurking and haunting the woods. He believed it was the latter, as the park had been swept clean of poachers and hunters. The ranger was going to pick up his radio and report the incident, but the idea felt silly. He said to himself, "What will I say happened? That I came across the heads of 2 deer in the woods?" So he dialed the code number 4, signaling the base that everything was okay. However, he took notes and buried the second head, just as he had done earlier with the first. The ranger then continued upon his adventure, but now he was far from settled, and the slightest sound in the woods would trigger his fears. But after he walked farther ahead, his heart then began to calm down a little bit, and even though this was also short-lived, he came across the third deer head. It was severed in the same manner as the previous ones, but this one had been stripped to the bone. This series of events made him believe that this part of the park was definitely haunted. He in fact wrote about his ordeal on his blog, saying, "Never have I felt so uncomfortable in the wilderness, as every sound, every moment, and everything seemed to be connected to my imminent death. I walked and walked and walked well beyond the sunset. When I finally made camp, I didn't make camp. I found a tree that was well off the trail, one that was next to a rock outcropping. I placed my back on the tree and the rocks and faced outward. I did not turn on a light. I did not do anything except sit there until dawn came, watching the forest, wondering about the heads and their meaning. The next day, I put my pack on and continued on my patrol. I finished my patrol and drove back to the valley and my house a day later. Then, only then, I slept. I followed a report about what I saw, but as far as I know, nothing ever came of it. And so the mystery remains unsolved. What could have severed several deer heads in such a manner and littered the woods with them? Could it be a psychopathic bear or mysterious being hiding its face in the woods, hunting and killing whatever crosses its path? Or is this ranger deranged? Let us know what you think it is in the comments down below. Jake would go on to speak about one of the most absolute saddest unresolved mysteries ever reported in Yosemite National Park. It was the terrifying story of a camper who had hung himself in Camp Number 6 sometime in the past, and his ghost has ever since been haunting campers who dare roam the Yosemite valleys at night. No one is sure why the camper took his own life on a tense wooden frame, but Jake claims that there have been several reports of visitors of Camp Number 6 saying that they saw a man in the dark hung and swaying this way and that in the cold night. Campers also complain that they felt a rush of cold breeze from the wooden frame at about 11 o'clock at night. The most prominent of these stories was that of a family that took their children camping at Yosemite back in 2015. The children were between the ages of 11 and 17, and late into the night, the two children decided to disobey their parents and wandered off the trails with some other teenage boys. But as they ventured into the woods, one of them heard a soft, shrieking voice call her friend's name. At first, she thought that it was one of the parents calling since it was about dinner time. They moved closer to the direction of the voice, but upon getting there, they did not see anyone. So they thought perhaps that the person calling must have returned to the camp. The teenagers then returned to the camp for dinner, but were surprised to find that nobody had said anything about calling the child in the forest. The following night, the children went farther into the forest, close to the stone wall in the border field, and they were now about 100 yards from the trail, which is against the park's rules even for seasoned hikers. They were all hanging out together, but then something very bizarre happened to them that would frighten their souls. One of the children had just spotted a figure about 50 feet away, staring directly in their direction. This figure was that of a man wearing a flannel shirt and carrying a flashlight. His beard was knotted, his hair bound in dreadlocks, and his eyes were flaming red. They then bolted down the trail as fast as they could when they spotted the figure, and they could hear it calling out her name behind them as they dashed away frighteningly. They narrated their ordeal to their parents when they arrived at the campsite, making them eventually switch sites. How did this strange man with the flashlight know her name? Was someone just playing pranks on the children? Well, we may never know, but this story of a man wearing a flannel shirt was corroborated by author John Keel in his notes, which said that ghostly apparitions have a great propensity to appear in checkered shirts. But what do you think is the case? Could the ranger's story be another conspiracy theory to discourage people from visiting Yosemite National Park? Or is there actually something mysterious lurking about the night in the park, causing deadening chills in the minds of visitors and rangers alike? Share your opinions with us in the comments down below, and if you've had a personal experience of a gloomy night at Yosemite National Park, we're eager to hear your story.